Do you ever feel like Instagram is taking over your life or that you are constantly just juggling clients, content creation, and family time? You are not alone. In today's episode, we are going to talk all about boundaries with Instagram and how to really create content in a way that is manageable, that is sustainable, and so that way you can keep on growing your business with Instagram for the long run. To be honest, when I first started on Instagram, I had pretty terrible boundaries. The whole idea of like creating content and growing an Instagram page was really new for me. And so it was very exciting. I'm somebody who, when I set a goal for it, I go all in. I'm like energized by it, I'm lit up by it. But it was also pretty hard too. And so it just required a ton of time and effort when I was first starting. And we also know social media is really designed to be kind of addictive, right? All of the likes, the comments, the following, the like constant barrage of notifications. And so I was definitely like very, very clued into my Instagram when I first started. But now I'm 4 years into this, right? I started my Sit with Kelly Instagram page over 4 years ago. And I think it is a big reason why I've been able to stay consistent for these past 4 years is that I have developed way, way, way better boundaries with Instagram. I've actually been able to have two accounts for the past 2 years. I started my business of therapy account about 2 years ago now. And it would not be possible for me to manage both of those accounts and stay as consistent as I have without really good boundaries, right? I have never been somebody who's taken like an extended break from Instagram. Yes, I've gone 3 and 4 days without posting, but I'm really, really consistent with my content. And I think that that's because I have boundaries, because I have systems in place, that it is not like an energy drain or something that I'm doing where I'm like going so hard and then I'm burning out and I'm pulling back and I'm back in and back out and back in and back out. Because I think that that makes it really, really hard to grow. So, in today's episode, we're really going to talk about some practical tips and boundaries for managing your time and energy when it comes to Instagram. So, first off, I kind of want to talk about like the struggle that we all face. So, when you're creating content, it can sort of feel like this never ending hamster wheel because you do need to create consistent content. I'm sure you've heard me say this time and time again. When I first started my Sit with Kelly Instagram page, I made a promise to myself that I was going to post every single day for a year. And that's exactly what I did. So that was 365 pieces of content. And in the beginning, I didn't have pieces of content to repurpose or to reuse. And so it was like a never ending hamster wheel of creating content, which can be really challenging, right? Another thing that I think is really hard for therapists is this idea of self disclosure, especially the way that Instagram has been the past year or so. If you scroll your feed, you're going to see that there's a lot less content that's like, here's 4 ways for you to XYZ, or here's 4 tips for you to blank, right? Instead, there's a lot more personal information in it. There's a lot more storytelling, right? So if I was going to share 4 ways to stop a panic attack, back in 2020, that might have been a good hook on its own. But now, in order for the content to perform well, I might say, I'm a therapist with anxiety. Here's 4 ways that I stop my own panic attacks, right? And so I'm kind of bringing in a little bit more of myself to it. And I think that this can be really, really challenging for therapists. I know it was really hard for me in the beginning because it really sort of blurred the lines between professional and personal, and kind of trying to figure out like exactly what that self-disclosure is. Another thing that can be really hard in the beginning, right, is just like feeling overwhelmed by social media in general. Of course, when anything is new, it is more challenging. You really want to succeed, and it's a brand new skill that you are still learning, right? And I think oftentimes social media can really do us a disservice. I try my hardest to create compelling content that showcases results without kind of contributing to this problem that I see so many Instagram coaches doing, right? They take these really exceptional, out of the norm results, right? And share stuff of like, here's how I grew 100,000 followers in a week, right? Or here's how I made $1 zillion selling a $7 product my first month on Instagram, right? And that's just not realistic for most people. I share my results often on Instagram. I do my monthly income reports and all of that, but I try and always ground it in context of, I've been doing this for 4 years now. This has been a growing curve. There are ups and downs. I have team. I have a lot of expenses, right? I always say I grew 10,000 followers on Sit with Kelly in under a year. And that's pretty incredible, but that's not 100,000 followers in a week, right? I've been at this for 4 years and my Sit with Kelly account is still not at 100,000 followers. And that's okay. You can be really successful still. But I think that sometimes it can feel quite overwhelming when we see these crazy, crazy success stories and are kind of comparing ourselves to that, and then feeling bad when we're not meeting that like sort of unrealistic standard or expectation. Something else that I know was so hard for me in the beginning was time constraints, right? When you're new to something, when you are not very good at it because it is a new skill for you, like Instagram, it takes a lot longer to do it, right? So, like, it used to take me way longer to come up with a real idea, to film it, to edit it than it does now. Now I can do that in 5 or 10 minutes, right? Start to finish, because I've literally created hundreds and hundreds of reels. But in the beginning, that was not the case. And I had a lot less time to do Instagram as well because I was working a full time job. I had like 10 or 15 clients that I was seeing in the evenings at the group practice I was working at. And so I had like barely any time to be creating content. And so that was really challenging to feel like I was in this building stage where I was starting something from scratch and I didn't have the time to dedicate to really giving it my all. So if you are in that season, I hear you, I see you, I know how hard it is. It is temporary, right? Like it will get easier, and hopefully you will be able to alleviate some of the other time pressures in your life, whether that is a second job, if it's a full caseload of like insurance clients, so you're seeing way more clients than you'd like, if it's kids and not having childcare, right? Like, how can we sort of restructure things in your business and your day to day to give you time for Instagram? And then the last thing that I think was really challenging for me in the beginning was sort of this like comparison and fear that I was going to like miss out on something if I didn't do everything right away, right? So if I had a good real idea, but I already had content planned for the day, I'd be like, but what if I don't hop on this trend right now? Like, am I gonna miss my chance, right? Or, I would be really obsessed with other people's growth and like kind of checking their numbers and stats and comparing it to mine and being like, why aren't I getting these same opportunities? Or why aren't I growing as fast? Or why aren't my followers commenting as much? Right. And I think that it's just so easy to compare because there's so much happening in public on Instagram, right? Like that, and there's so much happening that you don't see behind closed doors. So you might see an Instagram therapist and you're like, oh, wow, she has so many followers, or here she is posting another reel or posting another story. But you have no idea how many clients she has on her caseload. You have no idea how much money she's taking home in her practice. You have no idea what her work-life balance is like, right? And so I think that we kind of miss the mark when we start to make these comparisons. Okay, all that to say, I'm jumping off that soapbox of why it is so hard. I just want you to know that I absolutely see you. I think that it's easy to look at me and be like, oh, she's so good at Instagram. Like, this is so easy for her. But I share all that to say this was really, really, really hard for me in the beginning too. And the boundaries that I'm going to share with you are really going to change the game for you and make Instagram feel a lot easier, a lot lighter, and a lot more sustainable. So the first thing that I suggest doing is time blocking, right? Allocate specific time in your calendar for content creation, the same way that you do for therapy clients, right? This is super, super important. And this can look a ton of different ways, right? We're going to get to content batching in a second, but I think that it's really helpful to sort of like structure your days or parts of your days or your week by different tasks. So, maybe on Monday you do a lot of content. Maybe on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, you see a lot of therapy clients, or you see clients in the afternoon and you like to do content in the morning or whatever. But schedule that time in your day and don't just constantly be shifting back and forth. If you are expecting yourself to get content done in the 15 minutes you have between sessions, you are going to set yourself up for failure because it's quite hard work being a therapist, right? Like, we hear heavy stories. We have to really show up. We have to really be emotionally present for people. And so then to just like pop back over and expect to learn a new skill and to show up in a good way for it is super hard, right? It's a lot harder to build yourself up, film a reel, smile on camera, come up with something witty to say than it is to like check your emails or something between sessions or write your notes. And I know how hard it is to even stay on top of notes between sessions, right? So set up yourself and block off time in your calendar. The other thing that's really important is to block off personal time in your calendar as well. I know as like an ambitious therapist, what it feels like to almost have this pull to prioritize work over personal life. But I have never, ever, ever found that to be a sustainable strategy for myself or for the therapists I work with. And so for me, I always block out personal time first, and then I fit in work around it. We are very resilient as humans. We are very adaptable. The amount of time that you give yourself to do a task is the amount of time that it will take you, right? So if you have personal stuff that you want or need to attend to, put it in your calendar and you will find the time to do the other stuff, right? So every single week, I schedule my workout classes. I put my therapy in there. I put date nights in, doctor's appointments, like whatever it is, that is going in my calendar and that is important. Vacations, I'm like super big on scheduling vacations. You guys see me traveling all the time. But it's really, really important that you prioritize that, because the whole point of building this business is to give yourself more time with your loved ones, with your family, to give yourself more income. And what is the point of it if you're not even able to enjoy it? So I personally color code my calendar. I have like a different color for meetings. At my client sessions, I have different colors for like sort of focus work, right? Like outlining podcast episodes or filming content or whatever. And then I have a color green for personal. And I love to see lots of green on my calendar. Every day there is green, right? I have a green lunch break. I have time blocked off to take Josie for a walk. And then I try and do something like fun and enjoyable every day, whether it's watching, a movie with Tom and going to the movies, or playing pickleball, or tonight I'm going to book club, right? But like that kind of stuff is so, so, so important to me. Okay, so now let's talk about second tip is content batching, right? And so batching is basically where you create multiple posts or reels in one sitting. And it's really, really helpful because kind of like the time blocking, right? It doesn't require your brain to switch back and forth between tasks. You're able to sort of gain momentum and get into the zone with it, right? So I suggest batching things like by task at a time, right? So for instance, I batch like all of the actual content that will happen, right? Like, so what is the text that's going to go into my reels? What is the text that's going to go into my carousels? Like, what am I saying in the content? Right. And then another day, I'll actually film the content itself. Maybe a third time, I'll go ahead and like edit and write the captions. Right. But we're kind of blocking it up into different types of activities, right? Because coming up with ideas and figuring out what do I say, how do I want to say this, really requires you to get into quite a creative flow, right? You have to really be in your client's perspective, in their point of view, focused, ready to niche down. Whereas filming requires something else totally different of you, right? You better have that coffee. If you like to do a little hair and makeup, that's nice. If you want to, smile, maybe do like a little dance party in your office or whatever, and really get in the zone to show up and be like peppy on camera or be authentic on camera, whatever that looks like for you. I think my camera persona is like a little peppy, hence my examples there. But that's super, super important. And you can do this like in whatever way works for you. So you guys are probably going to think I'm freaking nuts. But when I first started my Instagram, as I said, I was working a full-time job. I was seeing a ton of clients on the side, and I did not have time to be filming content every day. And so what I would do is I'd plan out all my content in like a little Google Doc. And on a Saturday morning before I went to brunch with my girlfriends, I would actually sit there and film like 20 reels for the month and just bang through them in like 3 hours, because I knew exactly what sound I was using. I knew exactly what I was filming, and I was just able to do it when I was like dressed, when I was ready. And then day of, I could like edit it. I could add the text, like I could do all that. But I knew I didn't have to be responsible for like filming and posting for the rest of the month. Now I could never do that. I just I don't think that stamina in me anymore. I don't think that would be quite sustainable, nor do I need to, because I have plenty more time and white space in my calendar to be able to keep up with content on a day-to-day basis. So now my batching looks quite different. Usually on Mondays, I'll go ahead and plan out my content for the week, meaning I'll pick my reel sounds. I will pick what content is going in them, like what I'm going to say on screen or verbally in the reels. I'll write out what goes in the carousels. And then sometimes I'll go ahead and film for the whole week. Other times I just film like day by day because I kind of already have my plan in place. But that's sort of my process for batching now. There's no right way to do it. I think it's a little bit about knowing yourself, knowing your schedule, knowing what works for you. But I would definitely plan to batch. And of course, there's tons of different tools that you can use to stay organized as you're sort of planning content and batching out in advance. So for many years, I kept it very simple. I just use a Google Sheet. I actually have like a whole template included inside of the Private Practice Academy bundle for this that has different spots for like what goes in the reel or the carousel, your caption, the date, like the little audio that you're going to use, whatever. And that was easy enough, right? Now I use a system called Airtable. It's very, very similar to Google Sheet, but I like that they have like a little calendar feature. There's lots of different scheduling platforms as well. I personally have not found any that I like. Oftentimes I find that Instagram can be quite glitchy. If you're somebody who posts regularly, I'm sure you've fallen victim to some Instagram glitches before. And so I personally like to be able to see the post when it goes up, make sure that there wasn't like any text that was removed or the sound was removed or the captions were removed or whatever, a slide missing. And so, me or my team posts manually and kind of uses that as a reminder to engage a little bit, answer DMs, reply to comments before and after posting. Because I think that's just helpful in terms of like keeping the social and social media. Okay. Third tip for you is setting Instagram boundaries, right? So I want you to do a few different things. First off, designate specific times for checking and responding to DMs. I used to DM and voice note all of the time in the beginning when I started on Instagram. And it was helpful because I was building relationships, right? This was with other therapists and helping professionals, not with like any potential clients or anything like that. But I was like constantly chatting with other people. I was making friends online. I would eventually go meet up with these people, go to coffee, like that kind of thing. But just really building like a community of people who I enjoyed their content. We hyped each other up. We sent each other clients, like that kind of thing. Now, that was fun in the beginning, but eventually it felt really unsustainable, especially as my audience grew more over time. I started to get a lot more DMs and also more DMs from people that were not just therapists. So about 6 months ago, I actually switched to only doing DMs on my computer. I manage them through ManyChat. They have like almost like a queue your DMs come into, so you can like close them out as you get new ones. And oh my gosh, it has been the biggest game changer for me. If you don't have, tens of thousands of followers, you might not need something like that. But for me, I get, I don't know, maybe like 50 or 100 DMs a day. And so to keep up with them is really important to me because it's how I build community. It's how I build trust. It's how I build relationships. I like to answer people. But if I was just replying to DMs as I got them, I would never get anything done in the day, right? I would just like constantly be messaging with people. And so now I like start or end my day. It really just depends on my mood with going through my DMs and clearing them out. And it's so, so, so nice to know that I'm still really connected to my community. I do my DMs myself. That's very important to me. But it's not taking over my day by doing it like in one sitting. I'm not like really going back and forth a lot with people. And that just feels so, so, so nice. Another like specific boundary I have with Instagram is I have notifications off, period, right? I do not get any notifications sent to my phone from Instagram. When I open the Instagram app, I can see new followers, new likes, new comments, new DMs, but I get zero post notifications. I get no badge notifications because it's just going to continue to pull you in and kind of like feed that addiction that Instagram is sort of trying to do by keeping you on the app all the time. So that has been super, super, super helpful for me. Another really specific boundary that I've set is limiting scrolling and comparison, right? You should spend so much more time creating content than scrolling content and like consuming, right? If you are doing Instagram for business, you do not need to be scrolling and scrolling all the time. This is work, right? Yes, you can still do Instagram for fun. I personally, honestly, don't even use Instagram for fun. I use TikTok for fun. And I like to kind of keep those separate, but you should not be scrolling all the time. It is a waste of time and it is not doing anything to grow your business or your account. I get sometimes you need to scroll for inspiration. Definitely consider joining the Reels membership if that is something that is like taking you a lot of time, because I will do that for you. I definitely scroll for inspiration a lot. I scroll to study the trends. I scroll to study what's working in the therapy niche, in other niches, and really see how therapists can apply it. Because I'm coaching so many other therapists, it's really, really important to me that I understand Instagram. And so I scroll a ton, but I scroll from a place of being a business owner versus just being a consumer or comparing myself to others or like feeling bad that I'm not getting the same results or virality as other people. I'm scrolling to study and to learn, and then going and creating, whether that is creating a reel for myself, creating a prompt for the Reels membership. But definitely I would limit scrolling in comparison and focus on like truly getting into creator business owner mode. All right, my fourth tip for you is to set time that you are truly offline and that you are off work, right? This is really hard when Instagram sort of blurs these lines between personal and professional, right? Especially if you're somebody who's kind of moving a little bit more into the influencer space, or you're really leaning into wanting your audience to see who you are to build that know, like, and trust factor. You're posting things that are outside of your office, you're posting things outside of work time. And so it can feel like you're kind of always on if you're always sharing in stories and stuff. And so something that I've done for myself is really taking that pressure off. So I will capture things in the moment, but I will not post in the moment anymore, right? So like I'm going to book club tonight. I will probably take some pictures in the moment and I might share them when I get home. I might share them the next day on Instagram stories, right? But I'm not feeling like I need to post that on stories in that moment. Instead, I just take a picture like everyone else around me will, because everyone likes to share their content, even if they're not, on Instagram professionally. But I'm not like being pulled out of the present moment and putting myself into work mode. And so I found that to be like a really, really helpful boundary. I do that on evenings. I do that for sure on weekends. And it just allows me to be way more present and prioritize time with my family, with my friends, with my loved ones, because that is the whole point of me building this business, right? Is for me to be happier outside of work, for me to have more time freedom, more financial freedom, more joy in my life. And so why would I sort of like take away from that by feeling like I always have to be on with Instagram? Another thing that's really helpful is this app called Opal. This is not sponsored or anything, but they are an app where you can set like specific boundaries on your phone for different apps. So like you could say on Instagram, you only want to spend 30 minutes a day outside of the hours of like 5 p.m. till 11 p.m., right? It gives you like a 30-minute time limit only in the evenings. And that can be really, really helpful of not just like getting sucked into scrolling on the couch. And you can even pick too, like how strict you want to be with those boundaries of like, do you want them just to send you a reminder to get off? Do you want them to like literally block you out of the app? That kind of thing. So I definitely have some of those set up for the evenings. I have it set up for the mornings where it doesn't allow me on Instagram before like 9 a.m. You could do that for the weekends as well. So I just find that to be a super helpful tool. If you're somebody who's like, I kind of have a hard time maintaining boundaries myself, get some assistance. I think the app is like $100 a year or something. It's nothing crazy. But that really, really helped me with like sort of building that discipline and almost like disconnecting from that like constant like serotonin boost of Instagram notifications and like getting that validation again and again and again from Instagram. Outsourcing and delegating. So you can hire a virtual assistant for pretty low cost, like $20, $25 an hour. And I think that this can be an excellent, excellent tool as a therapist, right? So I do not recommend hiring a social media manager. First, they're going to cost you like several hundred or $1,000 per month. And I don't want you to give your content to somebody else. You know your clients better than anybody else. That is what makes you a great therapist. And it is what is going to make you excellent at Instagram, right? I truly believe that therapists should be writing their own content. I still write my own content for both Sit with Kelly and Business of Therapy 4 years in, when I have a large team that does a ton of work in my business. But that is because I know you as therapists the best. I know the overachieving, high functioning, anxiety millennial the best. And way better. I've tried so many different social media managers, virtual assistants, etc. My content is always going to perform better because I know my people, and I know that you know your people too. But there are things that you can do to get help with that content, right? So I outsourced graphics very, very early on, like 2 months in. I paid my sister $20 an hour, and it was like the best thing that I ever did. So I would write the graphics and she would create them in Canva for me. And that was so helpful. I know that it doesn't seem like super, super helpful because you're not making like a ton of graphics, but getting that hour or two back per week for $20, $40, $50 is so worth it. Like from a time perspective, from a consistency perspective, from even like you being able to free up another spot in your calendar to see therapy clients, like from a revenue perspective, super, super helpful. I also outsourced captions very early on for my Sit with Kelly account. I used to write really long ones. And so I had somebody do that. That was super helpful. The other thing I would definitely recommend doing is if you are somebody who takes a long time to come up with content ideas, that is something you can outsource with the Reels membership. It is $37 a month. I will give you ideas and tell you exactly what to post, right? So I will give you the trending sound. I will give you the fill in the blank script. I will give you filming instructions and examples, but it is still up to you to take the fill in the blank scripts and plug in your specific stuff for your niche to create the content because you know your clients the best, right? If you use my examples, like they're going to do fine, but the more specific you can be and knowing exactly what your clients are complaining about, exactly what they're going through, they're just going to do so much better. So that's a really cool way to sort of like almost have a social media manager, right? But who's doing like the 90% of the legwork for you of like finding the trending sound, staying on top of it, giving you the idea, but still giving you the freedom to plug it in, to make it in your own words, to make it specific to your clients, and to showcase your expertise, to showcase your ability to validate people in a way that, I never could because your clients are not my clients, right? Okay, so that's sort of my spiel for today. It is really, really important that you maintain these boundaries. It is not a one and done, right? Boundaries are hard. I know that you know this as therapists, but it's important to think of it as like a muscle, right? You're going to keep working it. The more that you do it, the easier it's going to get, the stronger you're going to get, etc. Of course, there will be days where you slip up, you're scrolling way too much, you're answering DMs outside of your designated time. That is fine. We all do that. We are all human, right? Sometimes you will get DMs from me at crazy hours because I'm just like, F it, I feel like answering DMs. I'm not going to wait till I'm at my computer. And that is fine. We have flexibility and freedom and free will. So be gentle with yourself when that happens. But it is super, super important to have these boundaries in place because if not, you will burn out, right? And when you burn out, you will pull back and your business will suffer, right? So set boundaries that are realistic, set boundaries that are sustainable, and set boundaries that make it feel really good for you. That when you think about like, being on Instagram in 5 years, you're like, hell yeah, I hope Instagram's around in 5 years. Like, I love Instagram. I love doing this. I love what it does for my business, right? Don't feel like this is something you're just like sprinting at and are going to stop one day. And I think that like being able to plan ahead makes that more sustainable, right? So I know I've shared this already a few times in this episode, but I posted every single day for the first year that I have my Sit with Kelly account. Now, the way that I did that is I planned ahead, right? I had bad days for sure. I had days where I didn't want to be on camera. I had days where I had no ideas. I had nothing to say, but my content was done. So it didn't impact my ability to be consistent. I didn't rely on being motivated 100% of the time. Instead, I had a plan. I had flexibility. If things didn't get done on time, I had enough time to push it back, right? Because that is so important. Life is unpredictable. Things change, your priorities shift, your boundaries need to adjust. So, kind of expect that and then don't be afraid to reassess and modify if needed. Okay, that's all for today. Let's go ahead and wrap things up. So we really talked about boundaries with Instagram, balancing your therapy work, and really protecting your personal life as the most important thing when you are a business owner. So I want you to consider time blocking and really setting aside time on your calendar for both content, the same way that you would with therapy clients, and personal stuff that lights you up and brings you joy, because that is what's going to make this sustainable. Set up time in your calendar as well to batch your content. Start to do things at least 2 or 3 posts at a time, right? Give yourself enough time and space to get into the groove. Third, I want you to try and really set some clear boundaries with your phone and social media, whether that is DMing only from the computer, if it's installing something like the Opal app, but really set some boundaries in place so you are not always on Instagram. Turn off your notifications. Do whatever you need to do. And then fourth is sort of like give yourself permission that sometimes things will not go as planned. Sometimes you will go days without posting. Sometimes you will, miss deadlines. You will shift. You will break your own boundaries. That is okay. The idea is to generally be getting better and better, not to have perfection all of the time. So pick one of these today and set the boundary and let me know how it goes. I'd be super curious if you want to DM me at Business of Therapy and let me know what stuck out to you the most from this episode. What is a practical, tangible boundary that you are going to take and implement? And I am cheering you on always. I hope to talk to you soon, and I will see you next week.